I'm Erin Dooley. I'm a screenwriter, speaker, and long-distance walker. I walked 85 miles on the Wicklow Way in Ireland, 96 miles on the West Highland Way in Scotland, but it all started with 500 miles across Spain on the Camino de Santiago to forgive and find healing. I documented my experience in a film, and I give talks on forgiveness. And now I'm recreating this by inviting people to join me on walks to forgive.
This week I'm in Chicago. I'm talking with Jen about her custody battle and about forgiving others and even forgiving yourself.
Being a mom was always my most important goal. As a kid with my Cabbage Patch Kids or playing with my Barbies, they were always pregnant and had babies. Even choosing teaching as a profession was because then if I had to be a working mom, I could maximize my time at home with my kids. If that's the one gift that my marriage gave me, was I had that solid, probably more than 10 years as a stay-at-home parent. And, you know, we had it all. We had the little blue house on a little cul-de-sac in a nice little town with a great school district, and that was all I needed. And then it was gone.
While Chicago may not have any mountains, there's still plenty of nature to explore. You can walk for miles on the city's lakefront, taking in the beautiful skyline while still getting out in nature. Or you can enjoy one of the many forest preserves in Cook County. Around the same time as the national park system was being created, Chicago community leaders decided to create a huge expanse of public land and protect it in its natural state. With that, Chicago created the first forest preserve in the nation. More than 100 years later, the 70,000 acres of parks are now enjoyed by an estimated 62 million visitors a year.
I filed for divorce in Labor Day weekend of 2011, was awarded sole custody at that point. Our divorce was finalized in 2012. From that point on, he was starting to challenge custody. In 2015, he was awarded sole custody. I represented myself pro se, and that did not go well. Over this time between 2015 going into 2017 to 2018, he spent all of his time alienating the kids. My relationship with the kids changed drastically from a, normal loving relationship to they stopped hugging me. They would be terrible in public. It just got very ugly. In February of 2020, basically I was forced to allow them to move to Arizona uncontested, and I have not seen my children since July of 2019, and I don't know when I will see them again.
What my ex-husband's goal became is parental alienation. He has rewritten our entire history to the kids, and he has made it that the kids want nothing to do with me. He daily, systematically, is planting seeds of doubt, and just through repetition and repetition and repetition is, changing that narrative in their heads. And the irony of the whole thing is the projection. Everything he is telling them that I did is what he has done. Everything they accuse me of are the things that he's actually doing. And every time he found, a new point to make, he just consistently pushed further and further.
This whole thing has impacted my emotional well-being on every level. I think it affects all of my interactions with people, all of my relationships. Trust has been impacted. Even times at my job, being a teacher and having to keep a calm, cool, collected demeanor all day has become much more challenging when kids are testing your patience. I don't know if any of it will ever go away completely. There's things that get better with time, but there are some things that, I'll probably carry some of this trauma with me for the rest of my life. I have developed some fairly severe anxiety issues. It's all sort of situational depression. My sleep is impacted. I can't sleep a full night's sleep without medication anymore. Day to day, I cope with the sort of physical stress symptoms with things like walking. It was very hard to be in the empty house all alone. There's days where I would not necessarily get out of bed, except for I've got to feed these guys, I've got to let them out, and I've got to walk them. Walking sort of morphed into a coping mechanism the more the struggles with the custody battle kept going. Walking is a lot of different things to me. Sometimes it's just exercise and trying to keep my weight under control. Sometimes, especially more recently, it's to clear my mind and to kind of get all that energy out. Sometimes it's that time to meditate and think about things. Sometimes I give myself the time, the duration of my walk to think about it and stew on it and meditate on it. And then by the time the walk is over, I can kind of clear my brain and move on after that. And immediately following divorce, things stayed fairly normal. They had a normal visitation schedule every other weekend and Wednesday nights. It was ruled initially that I had sole custody, and that ruling came from a guardian ad litem. The guardian ad litem does home visits at each person's house. They meet anybody who lives in the house. Then they spend time with the kids at each house, and they watch the interactions between both parents. Our original judge, who had appointed the guardian ad litem in the first place, he was very consistent in taking her recommendations. She testified that my daughter's voice, the tone of her voice would change. Like, it was literally robotic and very scripted when she was reciting her father's lines, but then when she was herself and just chatting and talking about school, she was very animated and she was a very lively and fun child. And these, again, these were all things documented and testified to by the guardian ad litem. Our old judge that had been with us on our case previously had retired, and we got a brand new judge. As we go into the last 5 years, as the alienation kicked in and as the kids started acting out towards me, the guardian ad litem is still saying this is because of him. This is coming from him. He is using the kids. It's abuse by proxy. There are terms for this. This is not, an unknown thing. So the guardian ad litem was able to pull all of this information together and bring it to the trial and very clearly state that she does not recommend he ever have custody. But because the technicality was I didn't have a lawyer, and I didn't call myself as a witness. And I didn't know how to do that. I still don't understand how she ignored the guardian ad litem and gave the complete opposite verdict and went totally against everything the guardian ad litem had said. I thought that the saving grace would always be the guardian ad litem. I had been a stay-at-home mom to this point, so we were always super affectionate. They were very physical, cuddly, and even at this young age, they were very active. They were very happy kids. They did theater, they played instruments, they did all kinds of different classes. They tried everything from archery to karate. We did it all. As soon as he took full custody in 2015, the alienation campaign was in full swing. There was no stopping him. He had 24/7 access to the kids. He cut off all their activities, and he told them, and this is a quote from the kids told me that Dad won't let them do anything fine arts related because I am a general music teacher, and that's what I like. So he would not allow them to do any of the activities they were previously doing.
Do you want to forgive?
In general, I'm a big fan. In typical situations, I've forgiven in many different scenarios and friendships, sibling relationships. As far as my situation goes specifically, that is a much harder task. It's a much taller order. The things he's done to me are soul crushing. They're heartbreaking, they're gut wrenching. This is a pain. And I've suffered loss. I've grieved family deaths and grieved my parents at a young age. Him, I don't know that I ever will. As far as forgiving the judge and the system, it's kind of scary to think that, she could impact hundreds to thousands of lives on any given day with the decisions she's making. And if this is what's happening to me, what's happening to other people? At this point, this was July of 2019, based on what my ex-husband said, no guardian ad litem, never spoke to the kids, just his word against mine, even though he had never been in my house. She temporarily suspended my visitation based on that. So after all was said and done, basically it looked like even if we got a hearing or a trial, I was not going to win. And at that point, I somewhat made the decision to just leave it alone, because once something was locked in stone, I would never be able to challenge it again, basically, because the kids are, preteens at this point. Time is not on my side. So I basically had to back off because things as they were better than having a verdict totally against me that I could never overcome. Come the first of the year, my lawyer is going back in to try to see what we can salvage, and basically I'm at the point where the discussions are at the point where I'm about to give up my rights because financially they wouldn't change anything. I was sinking further and further. I mean, I was living under the poverty line already, and I just everything was falling apart. I was going to lose my car. I was going to lose my rental. I was going to lose everything fighting this battle to try to keep a hand on my kids. So they came up with the counter offer of, if I let them move to Arizona uncontested, I can keep my rights and we would reduce my child support substantially. And on one hand, this is horrifying, but on the other hand, at least I still have my rights. Essentially, because of the finances, I was forced to let them move to Arizona uncontested. My lawyer kept saying, we'll have a visitation schedule in place, we'll get all that settled, and somehow that never happened in court. So that's where I stand today. Now in the summer of 2020, my children live in Arizona. I have not seen them in a year and probably will never see them again.
So yesterday, Erin was asking me about forgiveness, and I guess I never really thought that much about that. I think I'm inclined to forgive in situations where maybe the person actually is acknowledging their role in whatever it is, if they're actually seeking forgiveness, if they're showing some kind of remorse, if they are an active participant in that. Forgiveness doesn't equate to closure. It is not the same thing. I can let go and not forgive. I think a lot of people assume the only way you can let go is to give them forgiveness. My end goal has been more about acceptance, and I don't know, maybe sometimes people sort of make that term forgiveness generic for all of those things, generic for letting go, generic for acceptance. When I think about this judge, I have a lot of conflicting emotions on that one, honestly. Sometimes I get very angry. I tend to place a lot of the blame on this judge, this particular judge. I was depending on the court system and it failed me. I was looking for her to be that last line of defense, and she let me down, and even more so let my children down. Turning around and forgiving them doesn't change what my reality is. And my reality is the rest of my life will be impacted by the actions of one man. I mean, I may never get to be a grandmother because this man has taken my children. And I have not been hugged by my own children in at least 3 years. My children live across the country. I could try to contact them, but he's blocked their phones. He's taken them off of the online service that we were supposed to communicate through. He's cut off all communication. I have their address, but if I sent something, it would be intercepted. It's entirely possible with what he's done that I will miss my children's engagements, that I will miss their weddings, that another woman will be called grandma. The very thing that I've spent my whole life working towards, the most important thing, being a mother, has been taken away from me. He knowingly and willfully has done the worst possible thing to me that he could do. And it was a choice. He's taken a whole part of my life away. He's taken part of my soul away. He's taken my children. The bottom line is what my ex-husband did to me and my children is not okay. And I won't forgive that. I can't forgive that. Life, even if my kids come back, repairing our relationship is going to take, years and years of work and earning trust.
The hardest thing I've been working on right now is forgiving myself. I have been put in this situation where I had to choose to let go of my kids to save myself. This battle was killing me. It had literally sucked my will to live. It took every last drop of me out of me, and with the help and advice of therapists and lawyers and family and friends, we finally got to the point where everybody said, save yourself. And I did that, and I think that's what I'm working on as we speak, is getting to the point where I am okay with that decision, and realizing that by saving myself, hopefully when they do come around and maybe my kids come back to me, I'll actually be in a better place, and I'll be the person they can come back to. And that is the goal. That's honestly what gets me out of bed in the morning and keeps me breathing, is the thought that they will come back someday, and what are they going to come back to? And so I have to work on myself and do the work and take responsibility and get myself to the point where I am the person that they can come back to.
When we think of forgiveness, we often think of forgiving others. That was certainly the case when I began this week with Jen, wanted to talk to her about forgiving her ex and forgiving the judge in this case. So to have her, as we walk, come to the conclusion that she actually has no interest in forgiving them, it sort of stopped me in my tracks. But then when she started talking about forgiving herself, that gave me hope. And it was a good reminder, because that idea that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if she can have empathy for herself, if she can show some charity and take a step back and think about, okay, what were the circumstances that led me to do something that I, of course, really wish I didn't have to do, then that can spill over and translate into how she approaches other people. It might be that it would be a first step to also being able to forgive her ex and the judge at some point in her life, but it might not be. And it's a good pursuit to forgive yourself just in and of itself. So we all should show ourselves some grace and some mercy. So this was a great little reminder, even though the week ended differently than it had started out. It was a great walk to forgive.